Aristotle wasn't born a legend. He was just a curious young boy from a small Greek town. But from the very start, his thirst for knowledge set him apart. Growing up in Stagira, a town nestled on the edge of Macedonia, he was surrounded by nature, a world full of mysteries that he couldn't help but want to understand. While other children played, Aristotle would observe the way the leaves swayed in the wind, how animals moved, and why the stars seemed to shift in the night sky. These small observations were the beginnings of a lifetime devoted to understanding not just the world around him, but the very forces that governed it. One of the first moments that would set him apart from others happened when he was just a boy, observing the birds around his village. Aristotle became fascinated with their migration patterns. While most people simply marveled at the birds' beauty or took them for granted, he began to question their behavior. Why did they leave every year, and how did they know where to go? It was this kind of curiosity that would later drive his scientific work, especially in his study of biology. But for now, as a young boy, Aristotle's mind was already turning questions into answers. At 17, Aristotle made a bold decision. He left his hometown and traveled to Athens, the intellectual heart of the ancient world, to study at Plato's academy. It was a move that would change his life forever. But, as bright as he was, Aristotle quickly realized that even in the great city of Athens, the answers he sought were not easily found. His first challenge was not from other thinkers, but from Plato himself, his teacher and mentor. Plato believed in a world of perfect forms, abstract, ideal versions of everything. For Aristotle, this wasn't enough. He wanted to know the world as it really was, not as some perfect idea. He was driven by a simple question: why does everything exist the way it does? One day, while discussing the idea of forms with Plato, a moment of tension marked a shift in their relationship. Plato had spent hours teaching Aristotle about the abstract world beyond our senses, speaking of ideal versions of justice, beauty, and truth. But Aristotle, ever the skeptic, didn't just accept these ideas. He asked, "But how can we know these forms, Plato? Are they real if we can't see them, touch them, or study them?" Plato paused, perhaps taken aback by Aristotle's boldness. This wasn't just a question. It was a challenge to the very foundation of his philosophy. In that moment, Aristotle realized his quest wasn't to follow in Plato's footsteps, but to forge his own path, a path that would make the natural world the ultimate object of study. After Plato's death in 347 BCE, Aristotle's intellectual journey took him far from Athens. He traveled to Asia Minor and later to the court of King Philip of Macedon, where his life would take an unexpected turn. At the age of 37, Aristotle was asked to tutor the king's son, a young and ambitious boy named Alexander. At the time, Alexander was only 13, but Aristotle saw in him the potential for greatness. Though their relationship was rooted in teaching, it was more complex than that. Aristotle didn't just want to teach Alexander about politics or war, but about the power of knowledge, philosophy, and the pursuit of wisdom. One of the most fascinating moments in their relationship occurred when Aristotle took Alexander to the shores of the Aegean Sea. While the future king was focused on the grandeur of his impending conquests, Aristotle insisted they pause and reflect on the sea's natural wonders. "Look at the ocean," Aristotle said. "It holds mysteries that no army can conquer." Alexander, ever the warrior, was more interested in the battle strategies he would one day employ. As Alexander began to conquer the known world, he and Aristotle began to drift apart. Alexander's focus on power and conquest was far from the philosophical ideals that Aristotle championed. It was during this time that Aristotle, deeply rooted in his own philosophy, began to develop ideas that would shape his future. He turned away from the abstract ideas of Plato and began focusing on the real, observable world, an approach that would lay the foundation for much of modern science. After years spent tutoring Alexander, Aristotle returned to Athens, now a seasoned philosopher with ideas that were ready to be shared with the world. There, he founded his own school, the Lyceum, where he could finally teach on his own terms. His approach was unlike anything that had come before. He didn't just theorize, he observed. He categorized animals, studied plants, and analyzed the natural world with a focus on understanding how things worked, why they worked the way they did, and what this told us about the universe. One memorable story from his time at the Lyceum involves a remarkable act of patience. Aristotle, fascinated by the behavior of bees, would often spend hours watching a colony. He noticed how the bees worked together, each fulfilling a role in the hive, from collecting nectar to tending the queen. But what struck him most was their sense of order and purpose. Aristotle's observation was groundbreaking. He saw that each bee, though seemingly insignificant on its own, contributed to the greater harmony of the hive. In this moment, Aristotle not only laid the groundwork for his future studies in biology, but also saw the first inklings of his ethical theory that would later emerge in Nicomachean ethics, that individuals, much like bees, find their purpose in the harmony of the whole. Aristotle's works on ethics, logic, and politics made him famous, but it was his study of the natural world that truly set him apart. He spent years studying animals, dissecting them, categorizing their behaviors, and learning about their biology. One famous story tells of how Aristotle observed the way fish laid their eggs, spending hours, sometimes even days, gathering details that would later become foundational in the study of biology. His curiosity was boundless, and his commitment to understanding the world through evidence would inspire generations of scientists after him. However, Aristotle's life wasn't just about intellectual pursuit, it was also filled with personal challenges. After Alexander's death in 323 BCE, political tensions in Athens rose, and Aristotle, who had close ties to the Macedonian royal family, became a target. He was accused of impiety, a serious charge in a city like Athens, and was forced to flee. He spent his last years in exile on the island of Euboea, continuing his studies and writing until his death in 322 BCE. Despite the personal hardships, Aristotle's influence only grew. His works laid the foundation for many fields of study that would follow. His approach to logic would become the cornerstone of Western reasoning. His studies of ethics would shape moral philosophy for centuries, and his biological observations would shape the future of science. Even as he faced exile, Aristotle's ideas were too powerful to be silenced. His legacy didn't just endure, it flourished, reaching across generations and cultures, continuing to shape the way we think today. Aristotle's story is one of persistence, of seeing the world not just for what it is, but for what it could be understood to be. His life was one of constant questioning, of pushing against established ideas, and of creating something entirely new, a philosophy rooted in the real world, in evidence, in observation. His story is not just about the things he discovered, but about the way he approached life, with an insatiable curiosity and a relentless drive to understand the world and our place in it.